Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sally Gries, Chairperson of the Cleveland Foundation Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us as we continue our wonderful slate of programming for the Cleveland Foundation's 2021 Annual Meeting Week. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge my colleagues on the Foundation's board. It's a privilege to serve with such an esteemed and dedicated group of community leaders. I hope you all had the opportunity to tune in yesterday as we presented this year's Robert D. Gries keynote lecture featuring Isabel Wilkerson in conversation with Daniel Gray Kantar. The highlights we just saw are but a small sample of the valuable insights, deep wisdom, and engaging conversation we heard last night. Ms. Wilkerson's thinking and work provide a compelling lens through which to understand the persistent inequalities and injustices that we see across nearly every measure of well-being in our country and here in Greater Cleveland. As an organization that has been focused on improving the quality of life for all Greater Clevelanders, the Cleveland Foundation has a role and a responsibility in dismantling the policies, practices, and conditions that systemically hold people in our community back from living their lives to the fullest. As you heard at our annual meeting last year, and as Ron mentioned in his State of the Community address, the Cleveland Foundation has been developing a new strategic direction to guide our work over the next decade. We began this process before the pandemic, and the experiences of the past 18 months have only strengthened our conviction that we must work in close partnership with our entire community to respond to immediate needs as they emerge, while also focusing on how we address the root causes of persistent issues like generational poverty and racial injustice. Together, we can and we must do both. As we continue our grant-making support to organizations and efforts across Cuyahoga, Lake, and Geauga counties, in different fields, we will be looking for ways to address systemic barriers across all areas of our funding and work. These areas include arts and culture, economic and workforce development, education, the environment, leadership development, neighborhood revitalization, youth development, health, human services, and more. Instead of a rigid plan that sets a particular course over the next decade, we want this strategy to be evolving and continuously informed by our community. Our North Star will be our values as an organization and our commitment to work with the entire community towards shared goals. We know that we don't have all the answers yet about how to address these structural issues, but we are committed to seeking them out together with all of you. I'm delighted to introduce three people who have been helping to lead the strategic planning process so far to talk in more detail about what this could look like and what is next in our work. Connie Hill-Johnson is Vice Chair of the Cleveland Foundation Board and co-chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. Lillian Kuri is Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the Cleveland Foundation. And John Harper is Managing Director at FSG, our strategic planning consulting firm, which has roots in Cleveland and has been an invaluable partner in helping guide the development of our strategic direction. We look forward to continuing this work together with all of you, our donors, grantee partners, community leaders, and Greater Cleveland residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. I'm so excited for this afternoon's conversation and frankly to be back in Cleveland. Cleveland isn't home for me originally, but I did start my career here about 15, 20 years ago, actually working for one of the Homer C. Wadsworth former awardees. I'm taken back to a memory from when I started out my career. I was 21, young guy in a board meeting at the Cleveland Foundation, and a conversation came up around what are we doing to support young Black girls? As I looked around the table, I realized that beside myself and the school leader, there were no other Black people in the room. And so it got me questioning sort of what's going on in this philanthropy space and why was this dynamic there? And so it's a sort of incredible serendipity and just a huge honor to be here, to be able to support the foundation's work on this journey and to be here with you all today. So excited to dive in. Maybe before we get into the details of the plan and specifics and all these words, let's talk a little bit about how the foundation got here, right? I have this reflection from 15, 20 years ago, but a lot changed since then, right? Lillian, can you give us a little bit of color? What sort of actions or changes have been afoot at the foundation over the course of the past few years that sets us up to move in this direction?
Thank you, and thank you for coming back to Cleveland. It's wonderful to have you. It's a really important question and timely because of how we started this strategic plan. 3 or 4 years ago, as a few things were going on, we were beginning to think about potential move and the question of why we were moving, which is really important to think about the foundation and its future being more transparent and open and welcoming and going from the 15th floor of an office building out into the community, and how important that is to really think about being much more accessible and working with the community. But while that process was going on, it's such a big move that it also was a big transition period. So a really important moment for the foundation also to think holistically about the whole foundation, this move and this transition time. So that was going on. Second, I think we were really questioning and looking hard at our grant making and our impact and thinking about public policy and long-term change and how we could do more in that space as well to really think about lasting change. And so questioning that in the last few years. I think also we were really willing to take a hard look at ourselves and philanthropy at that time and think about the hard questions that we have to ask about impact and how we could have more of it. And so that was going on, and we were about to get started, and then the pandemic hit. And so we had this moment to pause and to think about the strategic plan at that moment, which is just actually a really important and incredible time to be doing some strategic planning.
Yeah, that resonates with me, Lillian. Connie, as I think back, sort of March 2020, we have the pandemic hits, we have the murder of George Floyd, so much that occurred over the course of 2020. Yeah. As you think about it, what was the impact of all of that as we were diving into the strategic planning work?
You know, I remember so clearly, it was May of 2020 when George Floyd was murdered. And we were in the beginning stages of this strategic planning process. And when we came back together as a board, I clearly knew something had to change and we had to pivot. And so here we are, and particularly as an African-American woman, I'm thinking, you know, wow, 2 pandemics. We're faced with systemic discrimination and looking at that globally, and the pandemic, the virus, COVID-19 is hitting us. And I think we knew as a board that we had to kind of pump the brakes, as they say, and pivot and say, what really are we going to do to address both of these pandemics? What are we going to do as we look ahead? You know, a strategic plan forces you to look ahead. It's a living document, but it forces you to look ahead and be fluid. And we knew at that time that we could not go the traditional way of doing a strategic plan. And so immediately the Greater Cleveland COVID Rapid Response Fund came to being, and with Cleveland being such a philanthropic city, so many partners and individuals and organizations stepped up so that we could be a blessing and serve those in need. Secondly, we birthed the Cleveland Black Futures Fund. And we have recognized for years, and I think philanthropy across the country has recognized for years that we've not given to those who are closest to the problem. And we decided to be very intentional about funding Black-led, Black-serving organizations. And I think we've recognized that we've just scratched an itch. You heard in the comments earlier that we were inundated with grant applications from nonprofits. And I believe the number was 40% had never approached the Cleveland Foundation asking for money. So what does that say about those organizations on the ground who are serving the community, but for whatever reason never thought they could come to us? So I think that timing last summer was pivotal in our whole strategic planning process.
That resonates with me, and from experiencing it from my perspective, it was sort of a pause that forced us to get honest and real with ourselves, right? Like, what are we doing here? This can't be business as usual. Let's get really honest about what the work looks like moving forward. So we covered a lot together. Spent lots of quality time on Zoom.
We did.
Probably 50 plus interviews, reams of donor data and grant data. Talked to some of those folks from across the country about what others were doing. The entire foundation board participated in the Racial Equity Institute's 2-day groundwater training, the full training. There was a lot going on. Connie, as you reflect on all that, what's one highlight that stands out for you, good or bad, on this full experience?
Wow. Good, I have to say, is the REI training. I'm a native Clevelander, knew about it, but had never, number one, been invited to take part, but I have to admit, never was intentional about saying, I'm going to do this. So when the board made the commitment to go through the 2 days, it was eye-opening. I turned off my Zoom camera a couple of times because tears were in my eyes. Really digging and learning and coming to grips with systemic discrimination and racism and social justice issues. And you know how you're looking at that Zoom camera and you're seeing all the faces and you're trying to read what folks were experiencing. But I think as a board collectively, it was another pivot point for us to say we are indeed on the right track in reframing what the Cleveland Foundation is going to be about going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It was game changing.
It was.
Like the tone, tenor of the conversation changed at that point. We were having a very different conversation, a more honest, transparent conversation. And I think it's what got us to where we are in some ways, right?
I agree, totally.
So we got these 3 priorities: fostering economic prosperity, creating pathways to opportunity, and building and sharing power. So there's a lot of fun words. I'm a consultant. We come up with fun words. But what does that all mean, right? If I run an arts and culture program, or if I'm interested in investing in environmental causes, does this mean I'm not aligned with the foundation anymore, Lillian? How do I think about this?
Yeah. No, I think this is one of the big ahas during the process, was that this approach, and I think the great work that you did for us, got us to think about what's important about a community foundation, and it's that we're place-based. And we can do the work to meet the needs of the community. That's what's special about the foundation, is that we can be responsive and we can work with the community on immediate needs. But we can also work on longer term issues and systemic change at the same time. And so we're uniquely positioned to do that. And I think there was a recognition that it's both and. This idea that we need to do both. That actually one or the other doesn't get you there. That the magic of the Cleveland Foundation is to really work with the community, meet the needs of the community, and do that together in alignment with strategy, long-term strategy, with the groups who are on the ground doing this long-term work, the policy work, the systems change work. So first, I think that for me was a recognition of that. And I think we've seen, and you've seen also, philanthropy go in one direction or the other. Only on the public policy or system change, or only on kind of responsive work. And I maintain that having gone through this process is that we were like, this is our magic. We do both, and we align them. And so first, I think that was a really important recognition. Second, I think for the organization of the Cleveland Foundation, it was a wonderful moment for us to look at the whole enterprise. Not just grant making. Most people just think of us as grant making and working with donors, but we do social impact investing. We have leadership programs that are really investing in young people, but harnessing the full force of the Cleveland Foundation towards this, and not just grant making. So that was another important piece of this that really is tying everything together, and we're being very intentional about that, which gets to the third thing, which is this big move, right? And the big move to Midtown, which is a transition period for us, allows us to put all this to work together out in the community with the whole organization. So I have a story. I remember when we did a lot of community engagement around the building itself. And we've been thinking about what it feels like to walk in there and what the building will feel like and the program. And a resident from the community said to us, "That's great, it's beautiful, and I get it. It's going to be really warm and welcoming. But if I don't feel that there's something for me there, or if I walk in the door, I'm treated the same way as donor." And that forces us to look at the whole enterprise and to really think about how we're going to operate in the community and with the community, both in terms of what we do and how we operate. And so all of this is coming together, which is really exciting, and thank you for all the work you've done with us along this path.
I certainly accept that gratitude on some levels, but I don't think I deserve it. Frankly, I remember saying at the pitch meeting that the answer to where the Cleveland Foundation needs to go isn't coming from us. It's already in the room, right? So much of what we uncovered together was about an opportunity for us to crystallize things that were already afoot at the foundation, the move, the change in the way of doing and being. And so, Maura, thank you back to you all for going on the journey and the commitment to being on that journey together. So all this is happening, right? We have the move to Midtown, the launch of the Black Futures Fund, other things that you can tell that there's a lot happening here. As you think about sort of getting ready for this new strategic direction, Connie, what would you say you were most excited about? What would you invite others to get excited about?
Wow. I think the first thing is because people are visual and they like tangible things. So I am so excited to very intentionally drive up and down Euclid. I said the other day, I remember catching the 6th bus up and down Euclid growing up. So when I look over at the hole in the ground and I envision the building and the openness and the transparency and being able to walk in that building and see community members on the first floor and not feeling as if I cannot connect with them. So I'm tremendously excited about that. I'm really pumped about that, and I'm pressing myself to the day we cut the ribbon. That's the most exciting thing. The other is that we already have heard from community members who are beginning to feel a part. We engage them with your help. We engage them in questions and answers and community feedback. We wanted them to feel a part of what we're doing. And I've already heard feedback from folks who are looking forward to the new direction we're taking. So that's what excites me right now the most.
I like it. I took that drive down Euclid on Sunday. It's a memories come about, but really it's a vision. You get excited for what it's going to look like a year from now.
Absolutely.
Lillian, what about you? What are you excited for, and what would you invite others to get excited for?
I think I'm most excited about that we're just beginning. I know we've been at this a year, and it feels like a long time, but I think we're committed that this is not a plan that sits on the shelf. And I think that's really important. I think it's a shift for strategic planning and for foundations and philanthropy. This is a working plan. We're going to work with the community. We're going to reach out. We're going to evolve what we're doing on an ongoing basis in a way that speaks also to how fast the world is changing and how quickly we need to really be able to work nimbly and to listen and to learn and to do it in a new way that is an ongoing kind of muscle memory and work that we need to do. So I think that this idea that we're just starting and that as we go through this next period and we move, that we're going to do it really listening, reaching out, supporting the leaders in the community, and coming to the community in a whole new way. So I like that we're just starting, actually. We're just at the beginning.
Yeah.
And let me jump in here. I think the other thing I think about with the Cleveland Foundation is I really see us, blazing trails. I am looking for other foundations around the country to come check us out, to say, how did you all do this? And share with us your best practices and your bumps and your bruises, but how did you get from where you were to where you are now, engaged in partnering in a real sense with the community that you're serving. So I'm really excited about how we're going to be able to assist others to do the same across the country.
I love that you say that, Connie, because as I look back on the Cleveland Foundation's history, I think about anchor institutions and what it means to do that, or what it means to grow the metro parks. The foundation's history has been the story of doing exactly what you just said.
Exactly.
And I feel like there's an opportunity now to exert that same flavor of leadership, but to do it in this way, right? Talking about what does it mean to actually partner with community in effective ways. I even think about the way that Ron started today, naming questions, right? You think about strategic directions answering a lot of questions. And instead, I think what we have is a lot of questions that we're going to answer, but we're answering them with the community, as opposed to the closed door space of the foundation.
And one more thing I'd say that you said that really surprised me about the process was this idea that we were willing to ask all these questions, new hard questions of ourselves, and put that to work. So I think that is new and exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad you're getting comfortable with it. I think that's what the future
Getting
holds.
more comfortable with it.
Well, thank you, Connie and Lillian, for this conversation. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. It was a pleasure supporting the work and so excited to be back with you all today. But perhaps most importantly, I'm excited for what this means for the community, right? I'm excited for what this will mean for Greater Cleveland moving forward. Great. So with that, I just want to say a great bit of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Come back.
you.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you.